Welcome to Managing Love Intelligently. My name is Jason.
And my name is Steve.
And what we do here is I present a topic to Steve, which I planned ahead of time, but Steve has no idea about, and we talk about it for an hour or so. And today's topic is 120 Days of Narcissistic Love. And as Steve ponders that, before we kick off the conversation, if you have a question for Steve, visit stevening.com and fill out the contact form. At the end of each episode, Steve will answer a listener question, so stay tuned for that. So 120 Days of Narcissistic Love is something I knew nothing about until I started working with Steve. Now that I know about it, I believe it's an important topic to be aware of when you're out there dating and looking for a partner. And as far, not only like the courting phase, but also moving beyond that. So I guess we could start by talking about what is this concept? Is this your concept, or how did you, what exactly is this for people who are listening?
Well, one of the things I'd like to start off with is kind of an homage to humility. I haven't had that virtue in large supply, but over the years, as I found myself making one gigantic, spectacular mistake after another, I've kind of learned it's good. It's very adaptive to be somewhat humble. And over the years, I have thought at different times that a given individual or a given writer mentioned an idea, and then I would go back and check, and people would say, "No, I never said anything like that." And it's kind of what happened with the idea of narcissistic love. I thought I'd heard it from a good friend long ago, a guy who's a film director in Hollywood now, and he said, "No." He looked at me blankly, like, "What are you talking about? Don't attribute that to me." So I don't know where I got it. I don't know where I get some of my best ideas. And I only say my because I do have them. But if you listen to this podcast, then you can say that it's your best ideas too.
Yeah.
If you like them. So the idea, and I know this can be confusing to some people because the word narcissist these days in the age of Trump is getting a lot of play, right? Mm-hmm. And it means a lot of different things. Sometimes it means an excess of self-love, but clinically speaking, narcissistic personality disorder refers to a maniacal focus on image and to the detriment of all other things. So the image is the thing that matters the most. Well, I'm introducing a third or perhaps a reversion to the first, and that is, I'm using the word narcissistic here to say that when I first fall in love with a new lover, the thing that I love about her is really what I love about me, the things I value about me. And the way it would work would be something like this. If she has a certain look, let's say her body shape or her facial features or the way she carries herself, her fashion sense, is such that I'm really pleased. I really enjoy that. Well, that would be reflective of my own taste in what I think the ideal woman or the ideal beauty would be.
Yeah.
And so, in a sense, even that is narcissistic, even though it's all about her, right? And so,
because it's all about you.
Well, ultimately, initially, because. And I think this sort of explains love at first sight for a lot of us, because I've experienced that, many times in my life, starting when I was numbering my ages in the single digits long, long ago. And I just remember seeing someone, and within like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, maybe of conversation, maybe there was no conversation, I already had this deep crush on this person. And it makes really... for the listener, it really makes no sense to say, I love her, when in fact I know nothing really about her. Mm. How can I love somebody who's actually a completely unknown entity? Oh, but I know all these other things. I know the sound of her voice, and I know the beauty of her face, or the way that she talks and carries herself. So there's a lot I do know and appreciate, and I have all this enthusiasm, and I think it's pretty common for males, and I think it's pretty common for women as well to have these experiences of love at first sight. But for the listener, I think it's so important to hold in mind that this is narcissistic love. If it's any kind of love at all, it's narcissistic because I'm thinking she really conforms to what I think is valuable or wonderful about life. So if I'm a big television sports person, and I'm not, but if I were, and she loved watching, say, the Lakers, and I'd be checking that box in my brain, going, "Wow, we're just so right for each other. We're so meant for each other. Man, we have so much in common."
And when you do check that box and have that, does that start spinning your mind in all sorts of different directions?
Absolutely, in all the positive directions you could think of in terms of, positive attraction. And then and ironically, at that stage of a relationship, all the negatives, they're totally discounted. They're like a null set of things I like. So they just go into that bag where they're invisible. They don't matter anymore. And if, for example, I find out that, she occasionally likes to work out. She likes to work out. I like to work out, or she's into mud wrestling. I love mud wrestling. Whatever it is, she's Catholic. I'm Catholic. And I'm not Catholic, just for the audience. Whatever it is that we tend to value, I mean, it's like kind of a hunt and peck approach to typing is like this, but what the narcissistic phase of love is like for romance. It's I'm just hunting and pecking and hunting and gathering the way humans used to do so many thousands of years ago.
But this is the way too. Like that's how we're taught to be attracted to people and to want to date people, like common interests, commonalities, things, right?
Yeah, you sounded a little bit like the Mandalorian there a minute ago. This is the way. Yes, this is the way.
This is the way we were.
Yeah, I think for me, it probably is that way to build a really strong weld between two human beings for just long enough for somebody to get pregnant. So, which is good for our species, right? I mean, it was just what the doctor ordered, say, 50,000 years ago.
This is where the intelligent part of it all comes in.
Yeah, it is because what's good for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days isn't really good necessarily for a lifetime. So of all of the women I've fallen in love with in that phase of my experience, and I'm still capable of that. I'm like 7 weeks away from being 70, and I still have those feelings inside of me. I can still fall in love easily that way. But nowadays, the difference as a wiser person, I hold that sort of feeling rather loosely. Well, of course I'm attracted to her. She's checking all these boxes. Oh, I love intelligent women. Oh, I love women who are independent and who really are given to notions of equality. Oh, I love how smart she is. And I love how, and it goes on and on that way. It's gone on that way so long now. I honestly can think of many public figures I could easily fall in love with or sort of crush on. But now it's gotten to the point where it feels almost like visiting the Louvre or some other famous museum, and you see a beautiful painting on the wall, and you just stand there stilled with the absolute glory of this human accomplishment, and then you walk away. And when you go home, you're not scheming how to steal the painting and bring it home with you, or, oh my God, I've got to get a reproduction of that, full size and get it framed so I can fake people out. No, I don't really need to do that. I can enjoy that tremendous appreciation of beauty and then again, hold it loosely and walk away. So for me now, I've evolved in a way that I'm hoping our listeners will consider evolving to, but you never get to escape this. As a human being, you're always going to be susceptible to narcissistic love. And in fact, I would say it's such a universal experience that you can pretty much count on it, even on the way to true love. And getting to the point of true love, let's say at the end of 120 days, you actually begin to learn, oh my God, there's another person in this relationship. It's not just me and a reflection of my glory. Yeah, there's actually another person here. So somewhere between 90 and 120 days, the scales begin to fall from my eyes, as Paul the Apostle said, and I see her faults, or at least the things that I find less desirable. Maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, when it comes to neat freaks, let's say for the sake of conversation, let's say I'm a 7, and we find out through the course of getting to know one another, oh, she's a 3. Now, that's not cool. And it's not because there's any truth to the old saying that cleanliness is next to godliness. That doesn't even apply to hygiene for me, personal hygiene. Because I think there are many wonderful people out there who would score a 3 or even rate themselves as a 3 on tidiness, or rate themselves even as a 3 on hygiene, as much as that might be appalling to those of us who have a higher number. But it's about the divergence in the numbers. The diversity there it's usually more than most of us can cope with. It goes beyond our capability of loving people. I think I'm a loving person. I'm pretty loving, but even I would have to admit, there are lots of people I don't love.
Yeah.
And I mean men in a platonic way, women in a romantic way. And I think that's not about them. I think that's about me. If I were even more loving, let's say a reincarnation of the Buddha, or the second coming of Christ, I think I could love everyone the way those connected to the divine are said to love the rest of us. But
when you're connected to the divine, you don't have to deal with clothes everywhere.
Well, that's the thing about everyone who believes in any kind of a higher power, like a God, conceives of that God as being a being living in another dimension. He's invisible. He's inaudible for the most part, and he's intangible. And he doesn't, and it's he usually, right? And not she or they. But it's also a situation where they have no needs. These gods or God himself has no needs. So, and I do. I'm this fallible, limited being who resides in this miserable incarnation, and this veil of tears we call planet Earth, which I love, by the way, if anybody's listening from the FBI. I love this planet. So, but I have limitations. I'm not comfortable in all environments. So if I walked into, let's say, I have clients who have spent years in drug addiction, and in the years where they were using, they would have felt perfectly comfortable walking in on people shooting up or using drugs in some other way. And for me, it would be shocking in the extreme. I would be extremely uncomfortable, very similar to the discomfort I feel when people are drinking excessively and things are getting loud and out of control. And I need to get out of here, is what I'm thinking. And I think we've all, if you haven't dated somebody who's aroused that feeling of I need to get out of here, you haven't lived. That it's going to happen. So if you keep dating, you're going to meet somebody like that. But it's usually only at around 90 to 120 days. And the meter starts ticking when you fall in love. So it doesn't count if you go over to a new acquaintance's house and you find out they're a slob. That doesn't count. No, I'm talking about when you've already fallen in love and then you find out little things about them. For the first 90 days, it's hard to even accept that those things are real, or that they exist, or that they are a permanent or pervasive part of the other person's life. But between 90 and 120 days, that 3 to 4 month window, that's when it really starts to hit you that, oh my God, they are so different. And you can be foolish and shake it off and say, oh yeah, but he or she will change. And which is like the best example of wishful thinking I've ever seen.
And can that change from like, say, the cleanliness or tidiness from 7 to 3? If you're a 7, the other person's a 3. Is there compromise, or is that too far away? Like, do you see that people do have it in there too?
Isn't this a little bit like the dildo conversation? Because I think when it comes to anal sex, and she has the strap on, and she really likes doing that, and it's 9 inches long. So I think there are certain situations where
it's an old podcast, so you have to find that one. In there.
Yeah, it's an old podcast, and not any more vulgar than I already was. So the deal is, though, there are certain things, certain problems in life that are easily solved with a compromise for those who are fair-minded and are thinking about equality. Because if we're compatible and we all want the dishes put away by the end of the evening, well, we can cooperate on either doing the dishes together or taking turns, and that's a great compromise. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to preferences and comfort zones where we are divergent, and one of us is a 3 and the other one is, say, a 7 or an 8, even a 5 is now we've successfully structured the relationship so that we're both uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And I think for most of us, that remedy really doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, that little bit of grandmother's advice, try to find somebody you like just the way they are. Mm-hmm. Don't plan on changing them.
Yeah.
And if somebody is pretty much perfect in every way, but they have 1 or 2 of these areas, you have to ask yourself, where there's so much divergence, is this a deal breaker? Mm-hmm. Now, for me, a 3, because I'm such a control freak, not because I'm so into cleanliness, it's just I need order in my world.
Yeah.
And if I walk through a house and she had her, underwear on the floor, and then there was something else on the floor, and that doesn't work for me. And I don't want to turn myself into the cleanup committee, where I'm issuing citations for, and how many times do I have to tell you? And when will you ever learn? And all those kinds of things parents say to children. I just don't want to have that kind of a relationship. So
yeah.
I can retreat with a certain fondness for her in my heart, but accepting that she's really not the right girl for me, or that I'm simply not the right guy for her. Mm-hmm. And then I would refer her to you, because you're single still.
I can't do a 3 either, though. So I did.
Well, what would be the lowest? What are you?
I'm probably like a 7 or an 8.
Okay.
Yeah, I grew up in like a household of like a 9 or a 10.
Okay, so
it was pretty like a museum where I lived. It wasn't even fun to bring friends over because got to have the pillows on the couch, and So I'll probably like a 7, probably like that. Like I like the comfort, but I like the order.
Did your mom still have the plastic coverings on the couches?
No, thank God not. No.
Okay, it wasn't that bad.
It wasn't that bad.
Because I've been in homes like that too. And,
yeah.
So it's got to be something where we're comfortable. And it's funny, isn't it? I mean, sort of a tribute to our really human limitations, that even if she was perfect in every other way, that divergence between a 3 and a 7, just on that one scale, would be enough to just throw it up in the air and make it impossible. And then you start adding.
But for most people would probably not, they would just go for it probably, right? But then if they go for it, then that stuff could start coming up later, and that could lead to other problems that arise from that. Maybe that's
what I'm seeing, is that then people do end up becoming each other's parent, and they start nagging the other person to reach their standard, and the other person starts acting like they're an irritated teenager with their parent.
Yeah.
Saying, back off, come on, leave me alone, stop nagging me. And I get it. I think that there's a fundamental incompatibility, and all I'm asking is for the listeners to consider humbly that they might be a very loving person who can really fall in love with lots of people who are not right for you. And I don't think that that's a problem in terms of love. I think that's a problem in terms of thinking and humility, because the alternative is mean, really think it through. If she and I get together in our, let's say at 30, and we have a reasonable expectation of living to say 70, do I want to spend the next 40 years of my life being uncomfortable every time I come home?
Yeah.
Or does she want to have the next 40 years of her life spent with my nagging her about, can't you take a shower once in a while? I mean, would it kill you to manicure your nails or whatever, whatever it is. And I have so many couples who come to my office for marriage counseling. And a lot of times the remedy is just to understand that they are more important than the construct they call their marriage. And that maybe in all humility, they just need to go back and admit they made a mistake.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean the other person is bad or evil, but they're just not really right for each other. I've met a lot of very angelic men and women who are married who don't have ADHD, who are married to somebody with ADHD, and they can see what's amazing and lovable in this person. And they go through life with so much frustration because he or she is never on time, or they never clean up after themselves, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, there are people who can do it and pull it off with grace. And if you're not one of those people, you really need to understand what ADHD is and understand it's not a moral condition. It's not that they're bad or evil or even lazy. They are just processing information differently. And for them, the important thing is something other than what some neat freak might think.
Yeah. That's what this breaks my heart about my last relationship, which had its faults in other areas. But as far as like cleanliness goes in like the household, it was like we did that really well.
I'll never have that good.
I'll never have that again. But it really was good. And like we cleaned together too, like on Saturday, it was like the day we did it, or Sunday, either one. And we split up the duties, and it was like for that one day, it's like cleaning the house and having it nice. And, it was just, we both felt really comfortable, really relaxed after that. And then all the other stuff destroyed it. But I was trying to stay. Maybe like looking back, I'm like, maybe I was trying to stay for that clean.
Well, like the way some people stay for sexual compatibility.
Yeah.
That's just, their last experience was sexually unsatisfying. They meet somebody who they really click with sexually. And then, her hygiene, I don't care. Her cleanliness in the home, I don't care. Her level of education, I don't care. It's like all these other things, because wow, she's really great in the sack. And, or he's a demon in the sack, and that's what she likes. all those bite marks on her neck. Yeah. So, whatever it is that matters to you matters. And in psychotherapy, there are no hard and fast rules, I think, for most of this stuff, except this one, it doesn't matter unless it matters. And if it matters, then you got to pay attention to it. This is why I like to see people date a lot of people before they settle down and get committed, because who knew you were that kind of a guy until after you meet somebody who's really divergent. I mean, with limited life experience, I would have thought all women are kind of neat and tidy. And I would have thought all women are really into personal hygiene, or all women.
I've met some that are not.
Yeah. Okay, ladies, you heard the challenge.
Clean it up, ladies.
So,
we're gonna get hate mail.
You mean more hate mail? Yeah. So I think it's so challenging to enter into monogamy for this reason, and that's why I said what I said about polyamory, because so often with monogamy, we do get profoundly unsatisfied at certain points when we're in a relationship that's got some of these deeper flaws. And then we find ourselves like falling for somebody at work or somebody in another part of our life who doesn't have that trait. I had to remember not to say defect because it's not a defect. It's just a trait. And then we start, if we do have an affair with that person, it's as if the monogamous person is building the perfect Frankenstein bride. So that I have this woman when I need to go over and get a neat fix. I just go over to her apartment and just looks so nice.
It's my favorite, those neat fixes.
And or another partner for the sex, or still another partner because she did want to have children and I really wanted children. Yeah. And at the end of the day, monogamy is kind of a challenging concept to put together. And in that sense, polyamory seems sort of attractive because you could really get a lot of different boxes ticked if you had a lot more people to work with.
Yeah.
It's just that I personally don't have the bandwidth to.
I would say that's 120 days of narcissistic polyamory.
Yeah, that's probably
it's like you get all the needs met from the people, but then after 120 days, then you get their emotional life, their troubles, what they're going through, and when they're crying on the phone, when they're upset, and
oh yeah, or when your current spouse really wants you to stay at the home and do some family activity, but the other person is calling, can you come over? And it's really, I think it's a little challenging, really, for one and all to put it together. But it's challenging anyway.
Either way,
yeah, either way. I think what helps though is if you can, for those of you who are parents and for those of you who used to be children, I would say encouraging children or young adults to get out and date a lot. And it's not because finding a mate is so very challenging. Or finding a compatible mate is so challenging. What's challenging is teaching your brain what it is you really need. That's the learning curve.
Yeah.
And so once you figure out, oh, I like sex X number of times a week. I like a woman who's hygienic at this level or this range, and I can tolerate neatness from say 6 to 8. I'm comfortable there, and then there are like 10 other different vectors that I might want to hold in mind that really matter to me, like intelligence, education, etc. And you have all that going on. It's a lot easier to find those people once you know what it is you need and what you want out of life.
Yeah,
to build a life that you really want to share with another person.
You feel that once you start getting clear on that stuff, that those people start showing up? Do you believe in that kind of stuff?
I do not, but which is weird because I do believe the entire universe is interconnected. And William Wordsworth is one of my favorite poets, and he writes extensively about this idea, how it's all interconnected. Even the inanimate parts of the universe are all interconnected, and that we would be best served by learning to love it all. So I do believe in that. However, I don't think the universe has an obligation to, now that I've achieved enlightenment and I know I like sex, say 7 times a week, the universe has an obligation to start bringing a bunch of 7 times a week gals into my life. I think what happens is...
I'm going to test this out and I'll get back to you. So.
Okay. So I think what happens is I know myself better, and then I can be more open during a dating experience. I can be more open during a conversation, and I can really, pick up and notice things that in the past I wouldn't have noticed.
But even doing that, I feel like will allow something more to come through, because if you know what you want and you're saying to other people, you may be setting off things in their mind that they haven't thought about, or you start making them think of what they really want. And I think in that way, it does kind of work in that way, but maybe not as just like, I don't know.
I think it works in that way that you just said, because I think that's part of being a social being and really letting others know who I am, and listening to when they're letting me know who they are. For example, you and I chat once in a while about sobriety and about drugs. I feel really comfortable with people respecting the various psychedelic medications, that when the medicine takes you to a deeper spiritual place and it's used in a spiritual sense to bring more enlightenment. I think that that's a very beautiful and appropriate thing for humans to do. But there are some people who are really comfortable with lots of recreational use of drugs or alcohol, and I'm not. And so there are people who've never thought about it one way or the other, and then somebody with an alternate point of view comes in and says, well, no, I really cherish being grounded to reality, and it really is important to me to be able to be fully present with the people I'm with, and I like it when people can be present with me when we're together. And for the person who's always been around hard drinking, that's like a new concept. I got to try that one on for size. What would that mean?
It's like talking to an alien.
It is. I actually I was talking to a client last week, and he's a wonderful guy. I really like him. And I was talking to him about the importance of the abuse-free life as a precursor to having an abuse-free relationship, which is itself a precursor to having a good relationship. Yeah. And because you can have an abuse-free relationship that's boring as hell, and you might want to get away from it, but it's at least got to be abuse-free so that I can see if it's rewarding and satisfying. Well, he looked at me, like you said, like I was an alien. And he was polite, but he was very repeatedly dismissive. And he said, well, you don't understand the people I hang out with. And then he kept talking about the kind of girls he hangs out with, the kind of women he hangs out with, the kind of crowd he hangs out with. And he was dropping a lot of references to women using sexist slurs. And he said, that's just the way we talk. And he was describing a world that would be a world I would run from.
Yeah, sounds like Mad Max.
Yeah, well, like a biker. Yeah, exactly. It sounds a lot like Mad Max, or maybe a biker bar.
Yeah, Roadhouse.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And none of that works for me. So if there's a strata of society that is as he described, and I have no reason to disbelieve him, I'm quite confident that there is that strata. That would not be where I would want to be fishing for my next partner in life. Yeah. And I think it's important for people to know that when you say, well, does the universe bring some people like that once you've figured it out? I think the mechanism that brings it about is social intercourse. We start using our words, people start hearing those words, and they are attracted or repelled by those words. Yeah. So the guy who doesn't like to drink, well, he's boring. He doesn't like to party at all. That kind of thing. Yeah, boring guy. Yeah, and you can just see women just mentally drawing a line through his name. And of course, I have seen that expression on many women's faces. I recognize it.
Well, I think it's cool to start asking yourself these questions and learning this stuff, because when you do talk to women, you do stand out. At least you will be somebody different, and the stuff that you say and how you talk and how you communicate is going to make you memorable in one way or another.
Well, let's say you were one of those people who wanted to have sobriety as a big part of your lifestyle, but you were in a milieu where everybody was drinking and carrying on. And I think it would be a shock to you, if we can use you as the example here, because eventually at some point you would have to build a new social circle. Yeah. And start hanging out around a different group of people.
Well, that's how they call like the healing journey or whatever. It's like, that's part of it. It's like, sometimes you need to let these people go if you do want to get better and improve. And if you do want a real satisfying relationship that takes you to levels that you can't even think of, because you've been wrapped up in these romances that were not even romances. They were just traumas being acted out in this dramatic display. You have to kind of let that stuff go.
Yeah. And you see it in movies and in television. I was recently watching the second season of The Lincoln Lawyer, or at least the last season of The Lincoln Lawyer. And the boyfriend of his secretary who herself is becoming a lawyer. And and just to add to confusion to the listener, and she's also the Lincoln lawyer's ex-wife. Her fiance is this long-haired guy who rides a motorcycle routinely, and he's also their private investigator. But he used to be part of the biker gang world, and he's taken this big step away from it. So he still knows people, and he still loves and cares about people in that world, but he's also had to strike out and move on to what he really wanted. And I think that whatever it is you really want, if you're listening to this right now, I think whatever you really want is just fine. You get to want that. Yeah. And build your life in that direction.
Yeah. And if you want the bike, that's what I like about this world. It is so weird and strange. And if you want the crazy biker bar and the drama and the screaming, it's like, go have it.
Yeah.
It's like at a certain point, I think if you're really being honest with yourself, and I think if all those people were probably being honest with themselves, they probably want, maybe they don't, I don't know. But
well, I just find it hard enough for me to figure out me and build my life in such a way that it's working for me, that I really don't have a lot of bandwidth left over to, like churches preaching at other people to be more like this way, this follow the straight and narrow path. Because I think there's room in this world for people to have all kinds of divergent lifestyles. And it's funny because as you age, I think those who are younger, I know young people who know themselves so well, they feel like old souls because they've already figured all this out.
Yeah.
And then there are lost little souls like myself who I'm like trying my best to figure it out. And I'm trying really hard to get it right. But it's like one failure after another, one really hard lesson after another. And it took, I would say it took me 2 adult decades to figure out what I really wanted out of life.
So when you were like 40?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where I'm at. I mean, I feel like I'm finally getting there now, but it took a lot of failure and a lot of heartache, a lot of hard stuff to go through, dark places, depression, anxiety, like working through a lot of that sort of stuff, getting over, I've been now no drinking for almost like a month and a half now or so. So.
Oh, you get a chip then, don't you? I mean,
yeah, start giving me these chips. But yeah, so going back though to so all the understanding this stuff and back to the narcissistic love, it's like, because once those 120 days are over, everything, that reflection of you with that, looking at this person as a reflection of yourself fades away. And then you have to then decide whether or not all these other things make it worth pursuing as far as relationship goes.
Yeah, it's time to fish or cut bait. Either I can, I may be dismayed to find out, let's just throw a bunch of things out there. I may be dismayed to find that she's a Republican. I may be dismayed to find out that she has the complete opposite point of view on some critical issue compared to my own, or that the other person is exactly the opposite of me when it comes to handling finances. There's just so many possible differences. But the challenge is, first of all, can I love this person? That's one question. Because frankly, a lot of us can't. We're limited. And then if we're honest with ourselves, it's so much easier just to admit, I really don't love the person who exists. I love some future version of this person, the one who's pulled her registration from the Republican Party, and she's now fiscally conservative and really careful with her money, and she's blah blah, but that person doesn't actually exist. So if I love that person, and you can hear people say, well, I love her, I just wish she could, and then they fill in the blank with.
I feel like everybody has that.
Yeah, we've all gone through it at least. Yeah. And then, but if you can still love them, then question number 2 comes up. And knowing that this is who she really is, could we be an effective couple together? Could we be the kind of couple who could face life's challenges together and by pooling our resources, solve the problems life is throwing at us so that we have a much higher degree of success in solving those problems? Well, for a lot of us, that's going to be true, but a lot more, I believe, it's not going to be true. Mm-hmm. Even when it comes down to the style of our arguing. I believe arguing is essential for, any couple to resolve problems, but I believe arguing has to be abuse-free. What if she hasn't bought into, or what if the other person, he or she, hasn't bought into the abuse-free life? That's going to have to be a deal breaker.
Yeah, that's a huge one for me now.
Yeah.
Because I would never do that. And I would never want to be in a relationship that's right outside of that.
And if you were much older than you currently are, but let's say you were 55 and you meet somewhere around that age and she still hasn't bought into the abuse-free life and she's not showing any sign of it, it's like,
I'd say good luck.
Yeah, it's too late. I mean, there's not even like room for making your pitch. I would say, God, it's been such a pleasure meeting you. Yeah. I gotta go. Hear my mommy calling me.
And then how about, so what do you think are some of the benefits of being aware of this concept of the 120 days of narcissistic love?
Well, first of all, I think everybody who experiences it, everyone who's lucky enough to experience it, should just go with it and feel the pleasure of it. So
it's kind of an unconscious thing that's happening.
Oh yeah, it's beyond our control. We can repress it or something like that. But if you're married and she's married to somebody else and you both go to the same church, and she's married to the pastor and she looks like so happy whenever they're together. Yeah, that's not probably likely to work out. But you still get to enjoy the feelings and to know that those feelings aren't in and of themselves some sin that's going to pull you away from enlightenment permanently. It's just part of the journey, and it's going to happen just like it's always happened since you were young, and it's not a big deal. It's nothing to pay too much attention to, but just to enjoy.
But what if I come to you and I'm like, okay, Steve, I'm in love, and it's day 10. And you're like, well, you got 120 days to go. You better hold on to, is it wise to be hold it a little loosely, or because the awareness is going to come. Once you put out this concept, it's you understand things in a different way. You understand what's happening to yourself and what you're getting into and why you're loving these things. And so I think you go even quicker, go from 120 days to maybe 30, I could figure it out. And
I think you're correct about the accelerated rate of discernment, but I think it follows from accepting, here it is again, narcissistic love. I'm crazy about this person. And it's those clothes she's wearing. I just love the goth, and it's never gone out of style for me. And even though I don't dress that way, I love it. So if that's the big box that gets checked and you're really engaged in enjoying that pleasure, I'd say keep enjoying it. However, the time to learn about narcissistic love is, it's always good to learn right now, underlining those two words. But ideally, we'd all learn about this long before we're actually in the middle of narcissistic love, because it's harder to concentrate and to learn new things about love when I'm sensing you're threatening my vision, dude. You're like, you're totally jamming me up, and get with the program. This is really cool. She's great. And instead, to understand and enjoy narcissistic love, just to ride that wave as long as you can, and with the knowledge that it comes to an end, and that although you'll always love the fact that the two of you had mud wrestling in common, you're also going to have the enjoyable experience of getting to know her in a deeper way. And maybe that will include learning that she's always been a hard drinker. or she's absolutely not interested in an abuse-free lifestyle, and or that he is absolutely, completely materialistic and not interested in anything spiritual whatsoever now and forevermore. If you learn those things, it doesn't ruin the enjoyment of the person that you met. It just probably disqualifies them from taking a leading role in a romance in your life.
So would you recommend people try not to have kids or get married during this phase, or like
as long as they're using birth control, I would recommend they try to have kids often in the early days.
Yes,
because that's going to be a lot of fun. However, I think my office has seen a parade of men and women come in and out who got married in the first 30 days they fell in love.
First 30 days?
Oh, yes.
Wow.
And certainly for the old maids in the group, the first 90 days. I mean, if you're going to wait 90, it's like the fruit's ready to drop off the vine. But you hurry up, get her married.
Is that a mix of narcissistic love and neediness? Or?
Sure, we'd have to say that. I think, or narcissistic love and naivete. Oh, thinking that she's the one, like the guy in, do you remember the movie with Viggo Mortensen, Captain Fantastic? Did you ever see that one?
You were telling me about it not too long
ago. Oh, and you still haven't seen it? Oh,
no, I wrote it down. I'll try to remember to see it again.
So he has these wonderful children, and he's been an amazing father, and it's not a superhero movie, so ladies, don't be afraid. And it's really a great film.
Yeah, he's a great actor. Too. Shout out to Viggo.
Yeah.
She's probably listening to this.
I feel the same way about Viggo Mortensen. I think I've loved every single one of his films.
Yeah, he's great.
But he's got a son who's incredibly intellectually developed, who's just an amazing young man, and falls in love for the very first time when he's roughly 18, I think. And he falls in love because, she had sex with me.
Yeah.
And
that's the test when you're 18.
Right. And it's his first experience. And he has this irrational belief that, well, she never would have had sex with me if she didn't love me. And he is quoting poetry, and he's making this big fool of himself in his naivete. And it's excruciatingly painful to watch because it probably brings back old memories. But
yeah, you trying to traumatize me with this movie?
Well, I've done the same thing, where I thought, okay, this is it. We're in love. This is my soulmate. We're going to be together forever. And I think watching that film with one's children and then discussing it would be very enlightening. Now, the young woman with whom he has sex is actually, I think, younger than he is, but vastly more experienced sexually. And he's just...
That means he's really in love with her.
Yeah. And she is horrified that he thinks now they're a couple and they're going to be together forever. Right. She's horrified. And she is not dishonest with him. It's just she had no idea that men of his age were still coming in that naive. She had no idea.
Okay. And
so she's not a bad person. But I think for all of us to understand that, just in the same way that just because we fall for somebody doesn't mean anything, because love really only applies to the heart of the person who's loving. They are loving and they see what is lovable about someone, and that's a wonderful gift. It doesn't mean they're shallow. It doesn't mean they're a shallow person for falling in love easily or with many people over the years. But it also doesn't mean, therefore I'm with the right person and we can build a life together.
Yeah.
That's the flaw in the thinking. And so along with the naivete, I think there are a number of irrational beliefs. And I think this movie is really good for Captain Fantastic for portraying how damaging even one irrational belief can be in our lives, because now we're not grounded in reality.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds really good. So with narcissistic love too, what other sort of, are there any other sort of ideas around it, or anything else that people should be aware of? It sounds like, I feel like we covered mostly everything.
That's it. That's all I got.
That's all you got.
Although I was thinking, after talking about Viggo Mortensen, in the future, I think sometimes we should do either movie reviews or book reviews on this podcast. When a book or a movie has something really important to say about sexuality. Yeah, because I think this wild part of our inner nature is really addressed well by the arts community, and they have so much to say that's so very true.
Great. Cool. So yeah, we'll wrap up there. And to end, we have a listener question. So I'll read that off. And again, if you have a question for Steve, you could visit stevening.com and fill out the contact form.
This is the part where I get really nervous. Okay, what's the question?
You're going to get, this looks like a good one.
Oh my God.
I'm looking forward to reading this one to you. My boyfriend thinks he has a small penis. This is probably because he used to watch a lot of porn. He is absolutely in the average range, and I am very happy with his size. I think he's perfect. What can I say to him so he can understand that bigger is not always better, and that being confident about himself would make him way more attractive? He doesn't believe me when I say he's, in quotes, perfect. He accuses me of just being nice. Please help.
Yeah. Frankly, I get accused of the same thing in my office when the subject comes up. I charge an arm and a leg for therapy. People come in and they think I'm just saying nice things because I'm being nice and getting paid for it. And I try to explain to them, I am not that nice. Just ask my little brother. I was a horrible big brother.
Yeah.
And
just listen to the podcast.
Yeah. And I think if you, right. And I think also for people who are paying for counseling, they have the right to expect some rather stark honesty from their therapist. But I have learned the hard way that when it comes to men and women with body dysmorphia, because that's what we're talking about, and in this particular example, it's his perception of his penis. In other examples with men, I've had men who have a laundry list of all their defects, defects that are not apparent to anyone else, defects that don't matter to anyone else.
Like their physical defects?
Oh, yeah.
They'll be like, I don't like my toes, or they'll say like something.
Oh my gosh, my ears are too big, or my hairline is funky, or, I don't like my weight, I'm just not big enough, or my height, I'm just too short, or, and it doesn't matter whether they're gay or straight, just, there are plenty of men and women, of course. That's essentially what anorexia is, and bulimia is, and it affects men as well as women,
and that's all under the category of body dysmorphia.
Yeah, where we essentially are nursing a secret hatred of ourselves. And we really don't like this person. And I think the old saying is, well, how could you accept the love of anyone else if you can't even appreciate yourself? I don't like saying it the way that people typically say that. You got to love yourself before anybody else can. But
this hippie doctor.
I know it just doesn't really
but it's
quite
true,
say.
Though.
Well, it doesn't say it quite right, because I don't think I do love myself, but I appreciate my body as skinny and old and decrepit as it is. It gets me from A to B. It brings me a lot of pleasure. I've got good memories with this body. It's been places. He and I have been places. So, when and I don't agree with St. Francis, who called his body brother ass. He was very brutal with his own body. And as long as your body is working, I mean, there's so much to be grateful for, right?
Yeah.
And even when it's not working at 100%, there can be so much gratitude for it being not worse. That it's as good as it is. So, I mean, I have a brutal answer for this lady.
Hit it, or give you it.
I really think this is the thing she needs to say to him. I'm fine with your body and I love it just the way it is. And until you can be okay with it, I don't want to be with you anymore. Give me a call when you got this shit figured out. Otherwise, I'm moving on. That's brutal, huh?
Yeah, but also it sends the message.
It does, but I'll tell you something. It parlays the power of women's attraction in the heart of a man into a very brutal confrontation with truth. And he's got to decide whether he's going to retreat into his fears or go forward boldly and claim the hand of the princess.
Wow.
Right? And that's the way the fairy tale works. The fairy tale doesn't work in reverse, where this nebbish guy comes up to the king and says, well, I would kill the Black Knight, but he's so big. It's not how it goes. To prove yourself worthy, you can't be hating on your own body and forever insecure. And then what? Going to doctors to get the penis lengthening procedures done. I can't tell you how many men I've talked to who've done that.
They've done it?
Oh, gosh. Are you kidding me? Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
What did they even do for that surgery?
Well, don't even start an internet search on that. You'll be getting like ads forever. So there are a couple of different procedures that go on, but in another book that is a self-help book that people could read on this topic somewhat, I think would be The New Male Sexuality by Dr. Bernard Zilbergeld, Zilbergeld with a Z. And in any case, the two procedures I'm familiar with include injections to add girth to the penile shaft. And
like steroids for your penis.
Yeah. And so sometimes they actually will draw, through liposuction, they'll draw fat from your body and then inject the fat into your penis, making it wider. They usually have to come through a second or even a third time because the fat gets absorbed unevenly is the kindest way I can put it, to where it looks a little bit like the surface of maybe a really dimpled orange or something like a dill pickle. There's the warts on it and all that. Yeah. And that's not good. It is not ribbed for her pleasure. It just looks gross. And then for the other guy, who does the other thing, they go in surgically and snip some of the tendons that attach the penis to the body. And I prefer the idea of having my penis well attached to my body because, I don't want that. I have a sense that it could be pulled off anyway by somebody with some real grip strength. And the idea that it could be more easily, it's like putting a pop top on your penis so that somebody could just yank it right off. And I just don't think that's a good idea. So, I don't mean to poke fun at men. There are men, and I've had clients also who have had a medical condition referred to commonly as micropenis, where their penis is extremely small. Now, these two procedures would do nothing for them. And that's a whole different conversation to have. And I think there's that, and that's extremely rare. But it is true that a number of men pursue surgical intervention with a medical doctor, and still other men. I've had clients who believe that attaching weights to their penis and letting them get stretched out will somehow make for a larger penis. I can't speak to that because I have a perfect penis, just for the listening audience. And so I'm so good with my penis. It has never crossed my mind that my perfectly average penis might not be good enough. I think it's because my mother loved me.
That's good. That's a secret.
And maybe that is the secret.
Mothers love your children. Love your sons.
Love your sons, and don't make fun of their little pee-pee. So, it's really, it's something, we're laughing and joking about it now, but I really think when a man encounters a woman who has so much self-loathing and self-hatred, he needs to send the same message, maybe with more of a tear in his eye, because people don't get well because you love them. They don't get well because you marry them. They don't get well because you're affirming. they've got to wrestle with their own demons inside of their own head and get on the other side of that.
Yeah.
And that's the way that works.
All right. Well, you all got some work to do. So the doctor is into today. So thanks, Steve. And thank you all for listening. And we'll catch you next time.